Okay, now before we move on to our next section, we need to give our fearless leader, Andrew Cameron, a proper welcome. So can I get everyone to stand on their feet to welcome up the chaplain of SGCS, the founder of 360 Faith, and your speaker tonight, Mr. Andrew Cameron!
That is not how I get introduced in my Baptist church. I love it though, Dom. I appreciate we're here for the diversity of the body of Christ together. I'm so glad you're here, and yeah, I'm really excited about what we're doing here tonight and keen for us to get into our breakout groups. So, but what I want to do first is just give us a little bit of a framework to think about our work and then what we're going to be talking about in those breakout groups. So, on average, adults spend about a third of their waking hours at work or in formal study. So that could add up to over 100,000 hours in your life. We spend a massive amount of time at work. But for many Christians, it's the hardest place to figure out how to practically live out their faith. We know we should have integrity in our work. We know we should be evangelizing at our work. But how do we work as Christians? How do we express our faith through our work? How do we experience God and worship God and do the work of God in our work? There's a really current reason why it's important for particularly young adult Christians to be talking about work as well. And that's because we're living through a really unique moment of change in our society. Every industry has gone through its various struggles. So if you're in the corporate world, you're experiencing constant restructuring. If you're in healthcare, you're probably experiencing chronic understaffing. If you're in the trades, you're probably experiencing the cost of materials just blowing up all the time. But then, on top of all that, every industry now is having to reckon with AI. And with that comes fear. Fear of losing our jobs. Fear of how this is going to affect it all. And I know it's not all doom and gloom. There are some AI truthers in here who are very excited about the coming AI. But I want to acknowledge that work is complicated right now, and it's especially complicated for you guys who are beginning your careers in this environment. So what do I want to do? I want to give us a biblical framework to help us think about work. So let's start, I think you know where I'm going to start, in the book of Genesis. And that makes it really clear that God gave work to humans, to Adam and Eve, before sin entered the world. And that means that work is supposed to be a good thing. In Genesis 1, Adam and Eve were told to fill the earth, subdue it, rule over it. And in Genesis 2, we're told that God needed someone to work the ground that he had made. So because of this, God made humans with the ability to work. And that means we can create. That means we can organize. That means we can control, which is a pretty amazing gift that God has given us to do those things. But then humans sinned. They rebelled against God. They decided that they wanted to choose for themselves what was right and wrong rather than trust what God said. And the main consequence of that rebellion was brokenness. So the relationship between God was broken. The relationship between humans was broken. And the relationship between humans and the earth was broken. Genesis 3 tells us that the ground itself was cursed, which means that our home and our place of work became a place of frustration. The ground grew thorns and thistles, as well as fruit. Thankfully, there's a third element to this story. I forgot I was supposed to be clicking here. Third element, there we go, and that's restoration. So Galatians 3:13 tells us that Jesus is the curse breaker. That Jesus lived a perfect life in obedience to the Father's will, and then he took the curse of sin upon himself on the cross. And so in doing so, Jesus redeemed us. He bought us back and offers us freedom. Freedom from sin. Freedom from sin's curse. Freedom from death. If we receive it. by repenting of our rebellion against God and trusting in Jesus and his work for us on the cross. And not only that, but Romans 8 verse 22 tells us that the whole creation is waiting to be freed by Jesus from its curse, and that the creation itself will share in the glory of the children of God. So we have these three realities: creation, sin, and restoration. Or if you put it another way, gift, curse, and redemption. And literally everything in the universe can be explained by the interaction of these three realities. We look at humans and we see love, hate, and hope for something better. We look at the physical world and we see beauty, brokenness, and the possibility of transformation. We look at the St. George Illawarra Dragons and we see moments of skill, overwhelming and relentless frustration, and the occasional glimpse that progress is being made. In our relationships with each other, we experience transcendent love, soul-crushing pain, and a deep longing for something that will last. And in our work, we experience the joy of work. We experience the frustration of work and people and limitation. But we also have a persistent belief that somehow our work can be better. The Christian understanding of work that Jesus taught his disciples was so transformative for the early believers that they began to look at work in a completely new way, even for those who were in slavery. In Colossians 3, the Apostle Paul writes, "Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart as working for the Lord, not for human masters, since you know that you will receive an inheritance from the Lord as a reward. It is the Lord Christ you are serving." Many of us today in the 21st century look back at the first century and say, why didn't Jesus get rid of slavery? It's a fair question, but it's also a question that misses something really powerful that Jesus did do, which was he gave anybody the ability in any role, any work, any situation to serve God, to worship God, and to find meaning and value in their work. If you've been around Christianity a while, then what I've just said probably isn't new to you. It's probably not the first time you're hearing it. But it's one thing to hear it, it's one thing to know it at church or in your quiet times at home. It's another thing entirely to experience it when you're out there in the wild. When you're out there in your workplace or at uni or TAFE. It's another thing to be confronted close up by the reality of brokenness and frustration, and yet be someone who is seeking to live out the reality of restoration in that place as well. In a few minutes, we're going to break into our work groups. And the reason we're doing that is because I feel pretty confident that you guys get the concept. God created work to be good. The world is broken, but we in Jesus can be agents of redemption and restoration. It's one thing to talk about, it's another thing to understand it, but what I want us to do tonight is in a really practical way, talk about how do we live this out? 40 hours a week. Because often I think we can get to work and everything we've just thought about at church just kind of disappears. Everything we know just gets lost in the stress, in the pressure, in the deadlines, in the dramas that go on in our workplaces. Some of you might not feel like when you get to work, it's very spiritual. And so tonight, what I want us to do is be able to connect our faith, what we know to be true, to the reality, our lived experience in our workplaces. Tonight we have 8 breakout groups, which you can see on the screen behind me. Each of these groups has a facilitator who's a Christian with a lot of years of experience in this type of work. And they're going to help you talk about it. They're going to facilitate the discussion around it. Before I move on to that stuff, can we just take a moment? I'm going to embarrass them for a moment, but if you're a facilitator, can you stand up? I'm inspired by Dom and his honouring of people. We're going to honour you. Can we just thank our facilitators for being here tonight? I really appreciate the 7 of you. Without you guys, we wouldn't be able to do what we're doing tonight. And so thank you for volunteering your time for it. One other cool thing is that they're all from different churches. So it's another pretty beautiful expression of our unity. So when you get to your groups, you're going to look at 3 questions. These are the questions. In what ways do you experience work as a gift? So this is the creation question. In other words, what's good about this kind of work? In what moments do you experience your work as a gift or as joy? How do you experience God's presence at work? And the nice thing about being in our vocational groups is you can totally nerd out on your profession and people around you will get it. I know sometimes, you can feel excited about something that happens in your work, but then you meet your other friends, you're like, you wouldn't get it. So we just like, how's work? Good, bad, whatever. But this is your moment. Geek out as hard as you want about what you love about being in your kind of work. Second question is, what do you find frustrating about work? So this is the curse question. In other words, what do you wish you didn't have to do? What do people complain about in your type of work? In what ways does your work feel disconnected from God? And then the third question is, how can you be light in your work? So that's the restoration question. In other words, how can you bring God's hope, joy, peace into your work? How can you be a redemptive presence? Someone who works differently, who changes the culture, the environment of your work. I want to give you 2 tips before we head into our groups. The first is, I want to be clear, we're not just talking about how to evangelize at our work. Often that is the nature of Christian conversations about work. But we're talking about how can you experience your work with God? How can you experience Jesus redeeming your work? And how can you work differently because of your faith in God? And if you do that, I believe people will notice. And Lord willing, you'll have opportunity to share your faith with them. But we're starting from the inside out, from our experience of work into how our work can impact others. Second tip is try to be as specific as possible. So you could answer these questions in really general ways, like I get to help people, people make it hard, I should be kind to people. Try to go beyond those kind of answers and get into the specifics, the moments, the practical, tangible actions that happen in your work. To help model this, I'm going to invite 2 people quickly up here. The first, so Jake, you can chill out for a bit, is Renee. So Renee is our education group facilitator, and she's going to answer those 3 questions for us. Don, can you pass that mic for me? Great. So Renee, you've been in teaching for a while. Can you share with us about 1 or 2 moments when you experienced joy or your teaching as a gift?
Yes. First thing about teaching that I thought was a gift before I went into teaching was that every day is different. Okay, because I've worked in offices and done a whole bunch of things that I thought were quite boring in the end. And I thought, well, every day is different. And that's very true. Doesn't mean that every day is fabulous, but every day is different. Probably the thing that I have thought about a lot is when people ask you to do things that you kind of think maybe they're below you, or maybe that's not, I'm a teacher here, why are you asking me to do that thing? But when I started at the school I'm at now, I decided whatever they asked me to do, I'd say yes to. That was pretty scary. So One of them was to teach CPR, which Andrew's the boss of, which is Christian, not CPR, this kind of CPR, Christian studies. So, yeah, but back to what I was saying. They asked me to support somebody in an art class. I'm an art teacher. Support a kid who was struggling. And the teacher was a new service teacher, and she was teaching what I had taught the year previous. So I just had to sit with this one boy who didn't want any help, didn't want to talk to me, and just sit through the class. And as I went week by week to this particular class, I realised that God wanted me there for the boy who didn't want to talk to me, but also for the teacher who was first year out. And in that time, she said to me, "Oh, I don't know how, it's kind of weird having you here because I feel like you're judging me." And I said, "I'm just here for this boy. If you want some help, let me know." And over that course of that year, she would say to me, "Oh, that didn't go that well, that lesson, how would you have done it?" So in the end, we took it in turns to teach the lesson and teach the different things. And by the end, she actually left and went to another school, but she wrote me a lovely card and it said a whole lot of lovely things, but the thing said that was really stuck with me was, "I'm a better teacher because of you, and that God put you in my classroom." I was like, okay. And there I was at the beginning going, I'm better than this. So yeah, so that was one really encouraging thing.
Yeah, awesome. What about the challenges? What are a couple of frustrations of teaching?
How long have we got? Look, I think the frustrations are the same with most jobs. The frustrations are other people, okay? Other people are not like us. They don't think like us. They don't come from the same families we come from with the experiences that we have. And we need to treat other people with kindness, with grace. And sometimes they're really angry. You know, they're angry at you. Parents are angry at you because you said something in the classroom. Like once I said, "I don't believe in homework." Now, I followed that with, because not everyone does it and it's a pain in the neck to get people to, everyone toe the line. What did that year 6 boy take home? "Mrs. Merritt doesn't like homework." So I got all these, well, they weren't emails at the time, phone calls and letters and notes from parents saying that they thought their kid should be in another class because I didn't like homework. So things like that are frustrating. And of course, like I said on your promo video, writing reports. Pretty much it, right? Agree with me, Emily?
So, how do you experience God in your work? And how have you had opportunity to bring light?
When I first started teaching, which was a long time ago, I used to pray through my class list on the way to school. And that was 30 kids, so I didn't have that long a drive, but I prayed for every kid. And I really saw a huge difference in, especially the tricky ones, the ones who just I couldn't get through to. I saw a massive change. So that was a really easy thing to do and to remember to do. I guess the other way is that I have just been really open to God's leading. So I've been at this new school for 5 years, and I think when I started at my old school, I was just new to teaching and it was all about just getting on top of everything. And there was one point in my staff room where I was listening to all the different staff who were all way younger than me. And God just laid it on my heart. "Oh, you're here for the kids, but you're actually here for all of these staff as well." So they're all different ages, different stages of life, new mums, 23-year-olds, like everything. And I just have been open to when they've come and asked a question, or when they've said, "How would you have done that?" or "How did you handle this boy you had in last year?" or whatever. So I've just been open, and there's just been tremendous opportunity to bless other people, either in their teaching or in what's happening in their families or their parenting or whatever. So yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Let's thank Renee for sharing with us tonight. Thank you. Now I'm going to invite Jake. Jake is a young adult and also an electrician.
Thank you very much. I definitely bring the light to people.
Hey. Do you know, I didn't even see that coming. I didn't set that up. That was just all
Just a bright idea.
Jake. Oh, wow. Okay. Oh, okay. We better rush through this. Okay. Apart from the puns, what's great about being an electrician?
For me, being an electrician, so I run my own electrical company, so for me, it's a good thing is the ability to actually have time off when I want. When I used to be part of youth group, we were able to leave early, be able to attend other events, which was a really good element to it. What I also like in the world with around people, I like being able to start a project with people, work through the project and see the excited expressions that people get. At the end, they're like, oh, this looks amazing, wow, you've done a really good job. That brings joy to me, knowing that, yeah, I've done something really good for someone, and it's just, yeah, really lovely. What else I bring joy in is actually seeing the growth of my business. So from when I started, it was very much sort of just doing day to day, figuring out each week by each week, but looking back on it, it's been really good to see how God has sort of worked through that every step of the way and been beside me. So that's definitely, yeah, really good about work.
Awesome. So what about the frustrations? What do electricians get mad about?
We get mad at painters, gyprockers, carpenters, builders, architects. But yeah, in all honesty, things that we get most frustrated about are being on a construction site is very much non-Christians, barely any in there. So it's being stuck in communications where you're at lunch and they give you some Bible passages that they butcher completely from the New Word Bible or some version of the Bible that I've never even heard about. So for me, I'm a ponderer, so I like to think before answering, so it's very difficult to figure out what to say to them. That's a frustrating element. Another one is anyone that is in the building industry, they understand that variations and changes happen every step of the way. So we are actually currently doing a project in Surrey Hills where the architect has just provided us with 3 different sets of plans in the same day. So we've somehow gone from being a $4,000 job to like 58 grand, back to 12, back to 30. So yeah, it's very frustrating. But having God by me the entire time really does help have peace and go, okay, yep, well, today is today, tomorrow is tomorrow. Why should I stress about tomorrow's stresses when tomorrow isn't here yet? So that for me has really helped keep me at peace when it comes to anything that's frustrating. And probably as well, probably the most frustrating thing is when you're mounting something on a brand new wall, it's nicely painted white, you don't realise you've scuffed your knuckle. Before you know, you've got a nice red smear along the wall and the builder and the architect walk past and like, you're gonna fix that, aren't you? Yeah, totally. Get the sugar soaked wipes. So yeah.
Awesome. So, you mentioned how God helps you have peace in those moments where you might otherwise not. What are some other ways that you've seen kind of God, you've experienced God in your work and that you've been able to kind of bring light into it?
Yeah, for me, bringing light through work really starts with the way I treat people. I want to be able to treat my employees, my staff, clients, builders, anyone around me with the experience, the peace, the honesty and the encouragement and the genuine care that Jesus and God gives to us. I find in this industry a lot of people are stressed because you might be working in a personal person's home where it's their money. So them always being like, oh, it needs to be perfect. So giving them that opportunity to have peace is a real difference. Anyone that works in the industry also understands the stress that falls onto you when they're stressed. So it's really good on that aspect. Another thing that I've learnt, a big part of the business for me is completely faith-based. So at the very beginning, when I started, I prayed to God. I said, Lord, I don't want to be doing. Ooh, that was close. I don't want to be doing don't want to have too much work where I lose track of you, Lord. So I prayed, Lord, don't give me more than 2 weeks worth of work at one time, and don't give me less than enough to be able to provide for myself and anyone that works for me. And ever since then, I've never needed to search for work. Work has always come my way. Like today alone, I was looking, I'm like, oh, I've just done a Tesla charger for a client. This is awesome. And then I had another one call up later, they're like, hey, we need another one put in. So it's just amazing seeing different aspects on that. There's also been heaps of small moments where I've put it to God and He's been able to look after it. So we get a lot of times where clients shuffle stuff around and I always just leave it to God and it always manages to work itself out. We triple booked a client the other day with 2 other clients and miraculously I said, oh, I can't do anything, I'm on a job site, I'll get home, sort it out. By the time I got home, 2 of those clients independently emailed me saying, hey, we need to reschedule. And the slots that they gave us were 2 slots we had available that just managed to work, which has been incredible. And at the end of the day, if God building this business up and working through it for me is that I can encourage just one person towards Christ, if it's myself, an apprentice, a colleague, or someone that I work with, a client. That's all that really matters. And honestly, I consider that business successful.
Awesome. Let's thank Jake for sharing with us. All right, so let's get into it.